Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps. Following some years of relative spiritual desert, the Catholic Church in Brazil is experiencing a spiritual renewal. This revival of faith is also evidenced by the numbers of young people seeking religious life and vocations to the priesthood. To tell us more, it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. José Correa, the director of the Brazilian office of the international Catholic charity Aid to the Church in Need. José, thank you for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
José, what makes Brazilian Catholicism unique?
Indeed, the faith in Brazil is expressed in a unique form because the Brazilian people is composed by three components. The European immigrants that came especially from Portugal and from Italy, Mediterranean part of Europe, more lively people. Then by Africans that were brought to Brazil as slaves to work in sugarcane and coffee plantations. And then by the local Indians that were living there in the country. Contrary to what happened in the United States, where mixing was not so much practiced, in Brazil, those three people mixed up completely, almost completely, and formed the Brazilian people of today, which is mixed race, I would say. And the result is a people full of joy, very musical, that express very much their feelings, outpouring their feelings in a effusive way. And this is shown in our masses, for instance. They are very lively, very musical, full of joy, of joyful singings. And that expresses the inner feelings of the people as well. And it's amazing when you go to the most miserable parts of the country, what we call the favelas, the slums, where there is utter misery. What you find? People singing our national music, samba, happy young people. It's unique. You don't find this elsewhere in the world.
And José, how do you see this reflected in the growth of vocations?
No, indeed, the vocations are growing in Brazil. It grew a lot a few years ago. Now, not so much, but the growth continues by 1%, 2%, 3% every year. For you to have an idea, 30 years ago, we had around 900 seminarians in the whole country. Now, we have over 9,000 seminarians. And in some dioceses, these seminaries are full. And in others, they are being more strict in the selection of seminarians because the number of candidates is big. For instance, in the city of São Paulo, where I live, this year, there were 55 candidates. And they cut them to 15 to enter into the seminary of that city.
José, we're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at a small program, a documentary, which is going to give us a deeper idea of the young people seeking the religious life and seeking vocations to the priesthood.
Brazil, the largest Catholic country in the world. Almost 90% of Brazilians claim the Roman Catholic faith, and religious experience lies deep in the traditions of the Brazilian people. Brazilian Catholicism, however, is still muddied by syncretist traditions, the remaining traces of Spiritism rooted in the African voodoo cults. Another concern for the Church has been the recent explosion of sectarian groups in Brazil, such as the Universal Kingdom of God, which in the last 10 years has gained a following of over 3 million Brazilians. Although problematic, the greatest threat to the Church has come from within. notably the distancing of the young from the church. This was painfully evident up until the early 90s by the lack of religious vocations to the priesthood and religious life.
About 12 to 13 years ago, we experienced a very big crisis. The archbishop at that time did not ordain one single priest in 10 years.
Speaking about numbers, about 20 years ago, the Archdiocese of Rio de Janeiro had in the seminary between 10 and 15 students. We had one ordination per year, sometimes two. This was a desperate situation since this city has more than 6 million inhabitants.
The deep concern for this problem and the specific attention by the Brazilian Bishops' Conference to address this decline has provided the basis for a recent and dramatic revival concerning the question of vocations. Attention to feeding the spiritual hunger of the faithful, combined with an oft-described charismatic renewal in the Brazilian Catholic Church, has drawn increasing interest of young people to the calling of a religious vocation.
Today in the Archdiocese, we have between 110 and 115 seminarians. 10 times more than 20 years ago. Every year, we have about 10 to 15 priestly ordinations. These are the numbers. Of course, behind the numbers, there is all the dynamic of the pastoral work. We began together with some priests, some nuns, and lay Catholics. We formed a commission, a team that went to parishes. We went to each parish, and we started preaching. It was a very slow work. In reality, one should invest one's whole life into this work. The echo came many years after we began, very slowly. First, we succeeded in having about 20 seminarians. Later, 25. When some years later we arrived to 40 seminarians, many people became more hopeful. Even the most critical priests said to me, "Come, preach to the young in my parish as well."
Together with the joy of young people and the discovery of their vocation to the religious life comes a challenge to the Catholic Church as to how to address this phenomenal growth, both spiritually and practically.
There are many young people who are waiting to enter the seminary, but for the moment we do not have enough space, as we have not finished the 7th floor yet. It is still under construction, and we cannot continue construction work since we are short of money. The 7th floor will provide space for more than 43 young people. We had to pile seminarians into other places because we were unable to finish it. At the beginning of the year, we had a group of 34 young people who wanted to enter the seminary next year. At the end of the year, we expect to have 50 to 60 more young people.
I can see that there is a significant growth of vocations nowadays. I think that the growing number of vocations in Brazil can be attributed to the fact that man desires to come closer to God. It was this charismatic wave in Brazil that brought many young people to the seminaries.
The blossoming of vocations in Brazil is already bearing fruit. These newly ordained priests are attracting millions of Brazilians, both Catholics who have fallen away from the Church, as well as new converts, through the potent combination of their youthful enthusiasm, deep spirituality, and adherence to the traditional teachings of the Church. One such example, who has become a magnet for enthusiastic faithful, is a young former gymnastics teacher, 34-year-old Father Marcelo Rossi, easily the most popular figure in contemporary Brazilian culture and faith.
I was one of those card-carrying Catholics, baptized, who goes to Mass from time to time. We are the biggest Catholic country in the world, but in 1997 only 4% were practicing. I was very worried about this. During the year that the Pope visited Brazil, he told us, priests, use new methods, without changing the contents. We have to reach the people who are outside the church. And from here came the idea to start my work. We started from nothing, but always in communion with my bishop and the Holy Father. We bring joy into the celebration of the Holy Mass, always respecting the liturgy, but always in joy.
Father Marcelo is not here to present theology, and he doesn't. But in answering the Pope's appeal for a new evangelism, he placed himself in a position to announce the gospel and to unify the people. Then we see that the population comes here to this place and actively participates in our work. Thus they hear this appeal for the first time, this announcement, and then they return to their completely overcrowded parishes.
Father Marcelo Rossi is not the only example of this new generation of priests, revealing the depth of this religious revival in Brazil. A similar expression of faith is revealed through the vocation of Father Zeca and his appeal to young people through the language of music. Although often challenged as noisy and superficial in its appeal to the young, the fruits of this phenomenon cannot be denied.
It's a very interesting vocation. He comes from a rich family. He attended the best schools when he was a child, the best private schools, and his family was deeply against his priestly vocation.
The figure of a priest repelled me. I didn't know any priest who could inspire me. On the contrary, what I knew about a priest's life was that he couldn't marry, he had to study a lot, and he had to abandon his family. Only these three things I knew about the priesthood, and that the majority of the priests were very serious. This fact kept me away. But despite this, in some mysterious way, this call, this interior anxiety continued in my heart.
He was an excellent surfer. He knew sports and all this ambience of the young. He knows how to speak the language of these young. He is very communicative and knows how to touch the hearts, to transmit the faith and the love of Jesus Christ. He knows how to speak about the questions that touch the lives of these young people.
When you become a public person, your word has a bigger force. You can come closer to mass media, and then your word can reach even more people. I am doing this to answer a call of Pope John Paul II for a new evangelism. Priests have to exert the function of their leaders, so it's a vocation very connected with the area of mass media. And through these means, our work is made easier.
He doesn't make any confusion between liturgy and theater or with mass gatherings. When he comes into the celebration of the Holy Mass, there on the beach where they built an enormous stage, he celebrates Holy Mass on the beach. Many young people come there, and I was surprised to see how he was able to bring about silence. During this celebration on the beach, there are moments with explosions of joy, and after this, he is able to impose an incredibly deep silence.
This idea about a mass on the beach has quite a long history. I grew up in front of the beach. From the time I was very little, I was connected with this beach, this harbor. I also practiced surfing, so the beach was close to me. And as a young priest, I had this zeal to announce the gospel in an intelligible, direct way for the youth. When the Pope came here to Rio in '97 for the World Encounter with Families, I united a group of young people from my parish and I proposed, let's celebrate on the beach, because our parish is near the beach. And when we make something on the beach, it's like a postcard from Rio for all of Brazil and for all of the world.
The rise in Brazilian vocations and the change in attitude toward the priesthood is increasingly evident. Statistics reveal that the number of vocations in Brazil has almost doubled within 10 years. These young priests themselves recognize the hostile nature of the environment toward the church and the changes that have occurred since then, offering the necessary hope and incentive for new vocations.
We're back with Jose Correa, Director of the Brazilian Office of the Catholic Charity Aid to the Church in Need, and we're talking about vocations to the religious life in Brazil. Jose, Pope John Paul II then sought that the Brazilian Church and asked the Brazilian Church should try and find new ways of communicating the gospel. What did he mean by that, and how was this then reflected by the Brazilian Catholic Church?
Yes, the Holy Father asked this to the Brazilian Church because a great part of our population had not been properly evangelized. Brazil, its immense majority, a Catholic country. Although the numbers are declining a little bit year by year, it is still a majority, the population is still Catholic. But the majority have not been evangelized properly, and they don't go to churches, do not frequent the sacraments, and that's why the Pope encouraged the Church to be more creative in preaching to the unchurched Catholics. And the Church has been creative in the last years to answer to this challenge. For instance, they increased a way of evangelization that was already existing in Brazil, but in small scale, now is practiced throughout the country, which we call popular missions. Some good preachers go from diocese to diocese, preaching in cities. They prepare special exercises of preachings, processions, pilgrimages, meetings for young people, very lively and very active, and people love that. The results have been excellent. And together with this, there is distribution of catechism, formation of catechetical classes, and conferences for couples, all sorts of other initiatives that go around these popular missions. Another way of reaching the population is a more intensive use of the media. Brazil now has 4 national networks that are Catholic. We have more than 200 Catholic radio stations, and the use of secular media also by the church, by church personnel, increased. And finally, another way is the lay movements of the church. And there are many movements founded in Brazil itself. Some of them are local, others are regional, others are national. And some of them are enormous, attracting dozens of thousands of young people all over the country. They reach mostly young people also.
There's a Brazilian expression that says, the hunger met the appetite. And one could say that this idea of use of music and the love of music in Brazil has also been met by the Catholic Church, particularly through singing priests. One in particular is Father Marcelo Rossi. Can you tell us just a little bit about Father Marcelo and the phenomenal success that he has had in reaching out to young people?
Yes, Father Marcelo was, in a certain way, it still is a phenomenon, a social phenomenon in Brazil. His records were the list of the most sold, the best sold records in the country. He was in the most popular TV programs, and his masses in São Paulo attract enormous masses of people, thousands
What kind of
thousands.
numbers are we talking about?
We are talking of some 30, 40,000 people in each mass. So much so that although he has a big church, it was an unused industry that was transformed into a church, has a seating capacity for 30,000 people. In some weekends, it becomes too small for the crowds that go there.
In fact, he's now building a new
huge church. It's going to be the biggest Catholic church in the world with a capacity of 100,000 people. It's unbelievable, but when you go there, you see dozens and dozens and dozens of buses coming from all over the country, bringing pilgrims to go to his masses. It's unbelievable. But it's not the only one. There are several other singing priests, and even there is a movement of young people dedicated to Catholic music. It's called Canção Nova, the new song movement. And they are specialized in evangelizing through music, theater, and other arts. And they are attracting also enormous crowds. They have near São Paulo a gathering place seating 60,000 people. And almost every weekend it's crowded by young people that go there.
Despite these phenomenal figures and extraordinary stories, there is a challenge confronting the Catholic Church, a challenge coming from the new churches, personality-based churches. Can you tell us a little bit about this challenge?
Yes, there is a very serious problem. I will define the situation as such. In Brazil, you have a minority, I do not know how much percent this would be, but there's a minority of practicing Catholics and a minority, a very small minority of practicing Protestants, much smaller than the practicing Catholics. And then there is a big middle of non-practicing Catholics. And both minorities are eating up this big middle of unpracticing, non-churched Catholics, so to speak. And there are some new, I would define them as sects, personalized-based churches, as you mentioned.
They're not the mainline churches.
No, not at all. No, I'm not talking about mainline Protestant churches. These are serious churches. I'm not talking about these. I'm talking about opportunistic people that just start a church out of nothing and try mostly to make some money out of it. They are very opportunistic and very materialistic. They even say openly that they preach theology of success, of money. Because they say if we're going to earn lots of money, we're going to be of God. If we don't make lots of money, then we are not of God, which is ridiculous. Even to call this a theology is ridiculous. But for very poor people, miserable people, if someone goes there preaching that if you come to us, you are going to get a better life, you're going to earn lots of money, you own your own house, you may be able to have a car, these people are attracted to this kind of preaching, especially considering that these sects, they also appeal very much to the Brazilian taste for music, for lively music. So these new churches use very much lively Brazilian music in their worship sessions.
Jose, I want to come back a little bit more to the question of vocations. We've seen and we understand that there's a flowering of faith, there's an interest, a growing interest in the number of vocations. How is the Catholic Church structurally in a position to respond to this flowering of faith?
Well, the Church is trying to answer to this challenge as best as it can, investing in, especially in the training of new priests, the seminarians, training of nuns, and training of lay people. I think that one of the best answers of the church have been the new movements. I'm particularly enthusiastic about the role of the new movements in the future of the church in Brazil. I think they are exerting already a very positive influence, and I think that their influence is going to grow in the future.
Now, Aid to the Church in Need has done a lot of work, particularly in construction and reconstruction of seminaries. How have you seen, why has there been such a weight of importance on this work, on this particular work of construction of seminaries?
It's because of the spectacular growth in the number of seminarians. As I mentioned earlier on in the program, the growth have been of 700% in the number of seminarians in Brazil. So the old constructions are not fit anymore to hold the bigger number of young men looking for the priesthood.
Jose, we see the growth in the Catholic Church. We also see the challenges. What is, if you can, what is, in your opinion, the future of faith and the Catholic Church in Brazil?
In spite of the big challenges, I have not spoken about other challenges besides of the sects. There's the poverty, that we have very severe social problems in Brazil, and many other problems. Ignorance, religious ignorance is another big problem. In spite of all these severe problems, I'm optimistic about it. I can feel that the grace of God is there touching our country. I'm very happy to see this happening, and I think that once more, as it happened in many other countries, the grace of God will go over the evils that we can find in society today. I'm very optimistic.
Jose, thank you for having been with us here today. It's clear that the Holy Spirit is touching Brazil in a particular way, and also the consequent challenge for the Catholic Church to be able to respond to this. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program. And if you would like to know how you can help so that the Church might not lose its vocations in Brazil, I encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Where God Weeps.